Well, it's very kind of you. You surely claps after you've heard. You might not like what I say, but there we go. What I thought I'd do was just give a potted history of how we have got to where we are with threats to liberal values and social cohesion. So I'm going to make generalizations, okay, because I've only got 8 or 10 minutes. But I think these generalizations have validity, okay? So there's a lot of statistical evidence to back what I'm saying. So I'll start by hypothesizing what I call a twin movement of what has happened in this country since the arrival of significant numbers of immigrants post-World War II, okay? The relationship between migrant settlers and the host society. The migrant settlers were invariably non-white, host society almost entirely white, okay? So there was an initial period of hostility and racism, but what I argue is over time there was a movement of attraction. That is to say, after this initial period, the indigenous, the host society began to accept the migrant settlers and their children as legitimate citizens, okay? So you had the epithet of Black British, British Asian, okay? So it was just accepted that it didn't matter where you were from, you were British if you had settled in this country. With the passage of time, as we had settlements, tensions arose because many settlers began to congregate in separate neighborhoods. Okay, and these neighborhoods, initially they were doing, because they were, if you like, racist landlords and estate agents, but increasingly over time, they began to choose to settle, if you like, amongst their own. And by own, I mean people from the same religious, ethnic background. And you had the identity of religion holding very strongly. At the same time, the identity of the white host society declining over the decades. And then I argue, once you have these segregated neighborhoods, and they exist in towns and cities across the country, including London, you could say especially in London, you began to see a decline in points of contact between the, if you like, the settler communities in these increasingly segregated neighborhoods with the host indigenous population, okay? And that creates and has created tensions, because concomitant with that was, for many, an increasing reluctance to integrate into the host society. So, I mean, these tensions have flared up from time to time. And my argument is that it's as if the host indigenous society began to view these established migrant settler communities as being some kind of other, okay, with quite starkly different values, okay, to their own. So I argue that this is problematic because many of these, Sukhwant will talk about the Sikh community, but it's particularly problematic amongst the largest ethnic minority religious community, that's the Muslim community, where, if you like, these neighborhoods become divorced, marooned from mainstream society and mainstream, if you like, values. And here my argument is marooned and indeed even hostile to call liberal values, such as equality of women, equality for LGBT persons, and freedom of expression and others. Okay, so you have, if you like, what Ted Cantle wrote on the riots in 2001 in the northwest of England, the leading of parallel lives. But these parallel lives also have parallel values amongst the settler population in these neighborhoods. And I then argue that partly this is a consequence of multiculturalism, where, let's say, the normative stance of successive governments was non-interference. Okay, people, that is a good liberal value. People should live as they wish to do, okay? And this has led to the separatist identities. And then these identities take a very strong religious hold, and so you have the rise of multi-faithism, that people begin to self-identify more and more with their faith. Usually it's linked with their ethnicity as well, but the faith, the religion, becomes, to my mind, a primary marker of identity. Okay? And so in these the numerous segregated communities, you have the phenomenon, what I argue, monocultural, monofaith communities. That is, that these are the cultures and faith of their, if you like, separate group, okay, in these neighborhoods. And they are quite distinct from the majority society. And as I argue, the majority society has been becoming irreligious. So I would say, I think the white British population now is the least religious it's ever been. Christianity is on the way down. Churches are closing, okay? Young white kids, they're more interested in the local football team or music or whatever, going out, okay? They have no interest in going to the church, whereas most ethnic minorities, you know, you're a Muslim boy or Hindu boy, Sikh boy, the mosque, the temple, the Gurdwara are very important. They go regularly. So it's like an alien world to the members of the majority society. And then I argue that with rising multi-faithism, segregation, you have segregated schools. So you have, in many parts of the country, schools with majority, ethnic minority pupils. So their points of contact with the majority society are necessarily limited. And that is to be understood because these are the neighborhoods that they live in, that they don't see the local, you know, although they're all local, but like say, call it the indigenous white pupils, okay? And minority faith schools, to my mind, are pernicious. So you have people from, by minority, I mean, say, Muslim faith schools, Hindu faith schools, Sikh faith schools. Although in this country, Jewish pupils have long had Jewish schools, but they're very, very tiny in number. So I argue that these problems have become entrenched, and once you have segregated schools, that will invariably entrench the monoculture, monofaith neighborhoods, okay? So, I mean, to undo that is going to take a massive task. You will need real government intervention, political will backed up with financial resources to disentangle this problem, this laissez-faire problem of multiculturalism and multifaithism, lead as you live. Because no government has ever made any attempt to integrate settlers. It's interesting, other European countries now have departments of integration, but not in this country. Integration's never been on the political radar. They've never been interested. They just assume that people will adopt some kind of British identity and, you know, somehow compromise with the mainstream, you know, values. But I think we can be conscious that this is really problematic, that we are increasingly getting pure, what I call pure religious ethnic neighborhoods. You know, these are really monoculture, monofaith, where the integration is, well, now non-existent. It is true amongst middle class, especially when they go to universities, they have to mix, but not all pupils make it to university. I think more than half don't. But even at university, they still might congregate within their own, if you like, separatist religious ethnic identity. So,
can I interrupt a bit? Would you be able to wrap up?
Yeah, my last point is that this phenomenon that militates against social integration and necessarily then the adherence to some of the core liberal values that I pointed out earlier, and ipso facto social cohesion. Okay, thank you.